The smell of the roast was still in the air when I realized that night would be different. The table was set like an altar. White linen tablecloth, lit candles, glasses gleaming under the warm chandelier light. My mother loved going all out when my sister came over with her family. "Everything has to be perfect," she'd say, adjusting the flowers, correcting even the angle of the silverware. I, as always, arrived early with my 2 sons, helped set the table, and pretended not to notice the discomfort that hung in the air whenever I was around. But that night, even pretending didn't help. I saw my sister's look the moment I walked in. That polished look, full of pity, the kind that says, "You try, but you'll never measure up." Her husband was already seated at the head of the table, talking loudly, as if the dinner were a ceremony in his honor. My nephews, impeccable in their expensive clothes, ran through the living room while my sons shrank beside me, trying not to bump into anything. When everyone sat down, my mother raised her sweet voice. "Children, you can serve yourselves first." And then I saw the scene that still pierces my chest. My nephews ran to the table, laughing, filling their plates with meat, mashed potatoes, seasoned flour. When my oldest son approached, my sister placed her hand on his shoulder and said, smiling, "Wait just a little bit, sweetheart. Let your cousins eat first. Then you can take what's left, okay?" The silence that followed was so heavy that even the sound of silverware seemed to echo differently. My son stepped back, looked at me, confused. The younger one held my hand, like someone seeking shelter. I wanted to speak. I wanted to scream. But my mother, with that diplomatic smile, added, "Oh, it's just a matter of organization, dear. They're younger, they need help." Lie. They were the same age. But at that table, the hierarchy wasn't based on age. It was based on color, on appearance, on who fit or didn't fit in the family photo frame. I swallowed hard and sat down. I looked at the feast, the plates full of food, the laughter, the sound of wine being poured. With each bite they took, I felt my throat tighten a little more. My oldest son whispered in my ear, "Mom, aren't we family too?" I couldn't answer. I just smoothed his hair, which he inherited from me, the dark, thick tone my mother called hard to tame. I looked at my sister, the straight hair, the lighter skin tone, the expensive dress. She smiled as if she were at peace, while my sons waited for the leftovers. Right then, I realized it wasn't just about food. It was about place. About what it meant to be part of something that only accepted me halfway. The dinner continued amid laughter and subtle comments. "These children need to learn to eat calmly. You should invest more in their English, you know? These days, appearance counts for a lot." Each phrase was a knife covered in sugar. When dinner ended, what remained on their plates was what didn't fit in their pride. My sons ate in silence, trying to disguise their embarrassment, and I just watched. The sound of silverware hitting cold plates seemed to mark a kind of mourning. Not for the food, but for something I still couldn't name. While helping collect the plates, my mother said to me quietly, without looking at me, "You need to understand that certain things are just the way they are. Everyone has their place." That's when something in me broke. Quietly. Without tears, without drama. But it broke. And while putting away the silver utensils, I thought, in that house, the feast was never about food. It was about who deserved to exist whole. That was the moment I realized. Perhaps their hunger had never been for food, but for control. And for the first time, I understood that the silence I swallowed that night would be the same that, one day, would make me return every crumb, back and in public. I woke up to the smell of coffee and a remnant of roast that seemed to have stuck in my nose's memory. The house was quiet, but it wasn't peaceful silence. It was the thick silence of when something stays lodged. My sons were sleeping in the bedroom, one foot sticking out of the blanket, breathing lightly. I stood for a few minutes leaning against the doorframe, watching how the younger one hugged the pillow. Last night, he asked if we had to be better to deserve to eat together. I said no with a voice firmer than I felt inside. And I promised myself, never again. In the kitchen, the morning light came in thin blades through the blinds, cutting the table like a ruler. I sat down, opened the notebook I keep for desert days, and wrote, "It wasn't about food. The pen hesitated, then ran. It was about belonging. Then I drew a table. For chairs. And in the corner 2 smaller chairs with the word later. I closed my eyes and heard, as if the room still surrounded me, my sister's phrase on my son's shoulder. Later you can take what's left. My phone vibrated on the counter. Family group. Photo of the nephews laughing, full plates, my mother's caption. Yesterday was beautiful. Family together is everything. Heart reactions, applause, sparkle. I scrolled, no image of mine. Not even a thank you for what I brought, for the sweets my sons helped make. Only the usual ones. In impeccable frames. I tried to swallow. My throat didn't cooperate. I went to the service area where I keep a cork board with messages. I pinned the screenshot of the messages with a red pin. Next to it, I glued an old photo. Me and my sister at the same age as our children. I remembered the day my mother ran her hand through her straight hair and said, "So neat," and then looked at mine, kinky, and commented, "One day you'll learn." I learned. I learned to be very good at almost everything, to see if that would tear up the later label. Back at the table I opened work email. An invitation to speak at a women's leadership seminar. The proposed theme. Empty plates and full places. What doesn't fit in corporate discourse? I almost laughed. There's a tone of irony when life returns to you with a title what you try to hide in silence. My oldest son woke up. He came barefoot, hair disheveled, sitting in the corner chair like he always does. He said he likes to look at the world straight on. He asked if today we could eat at the park. He said that there, everyone eats at the same time. Said yes. While he tied his shoelace, he blurted out, "Mom, yesterday I thought we weren't important." I sat at eye level with him. "You are the center of the table where I sit." He nodded, but his gaze stayed clouded for a few seconds. Children understand. They always understand. When they went to get dressed, I opened my phone's voice recorder. I spoke softly, just to myself. My family's history is a table with counted chairs. What I want is an ironworks. I stopped the recording and laughed at the image. But that's what it was. To manufacture with iron and intention, places that can't be pulled back. The family group vibrated again. An aunt. "What a wonderful night, everything perfect." Another aunt. "Anna's children ate so much. What a joy." Anna's children, mine without a pronoun. My father sent an audio. "Daughter, you know how your mother is, everything by order. Don't take it the wrong way." The word order scratched my skin like dry chalk. Order for whom? Order against whom? I grabbed the laptop and created a folder. Mesa/files. I dragged the screenshots, dated with timestamps. I renamed each one. No unders under 01.png. Later under 02.png. United under without under on 03.png. The same discipline I use for big projects, I was starting to use to stitch together the fabric of what they call impression. Because when the heart records, they say it's an exaggeration. When the file records, they call it fact. In the afternoon, I went to the market with the children. We chose soft bread fruit juice. In line, the cashier complimented the younger one's smile, asked if it was for the family outing. For a second the question hurt, but I answered smiling, "It's for our feast." My oldest laughed out loud. "A feast is when we eat first." The woman laughed along, not understanding anything. I understood everything. At the park we spread out the blanket, shared the fruit, the bread. I looked at them eating and noted on my phone's notepad. Every time they put you last, create a beginning. The wind brought the smell of grass and the sound of a ball bouncing. It was simple, but it was whole. I came home with a silent determination. I opened my text editor, wrote the draft of what I would like to say out loud one day. About tables, crumbs, and what it means to love without hierarchy. I saved it as /mesa/first manifesto.docs. I closed my eyes for a moment, and an image came to me. A projector lit up, a white wall, and the phrases "no one likes to hear dancing" in black letters before everyone. My phone vibrated with messages from friends, similar stories pouring through WhatsApp. In my house too, with my son's color. In my husband's family. My loneliness diminished as the pain gained language. I took a deep breath. I wasn't just going to survive. I was going to organize. Before ending the day, I opened my notes app and wrote, as if speaking to those reading me from afar. If you've ever been last in line in your own home, stay with me. We'll align the chairs. One at a time. Subscribe not for me but for you. Because when we name what hurt, the table stops being a trick and becomes a plan. Cliffhanger. When I went to put away the notebook, I noticed a thin envelope slipped under the door. No sender. Inside a single photo. The perfect family frame from my mother's living room. And in the glass reflected me and my sons standing behind the camera. Someone had seen. And had chosen to show me. During the following weeks, the silence between me and my family transformed into a transparent wall. I saw everything, heard everything, but no one saw me. The conversations continued in the group, the same photos, the same captions. Family is a blessing. Nothing more important than being together. I read, motionless, like someone observing a ritual they stopped believing in. My sister sent occasional messages, always dry. Are you going to Mom's house Sunday? Or bring the kids, they miss their cousins. I'd respond with a maybe. She never asked anything more. Not about my work, not about my sons. Only about presence. Physical presence, not soulful. I started noticing how every gesture came wrapped in varnish. On the last visit, I brought an apple pie my sons made with me. When I arrived, I found my mother praising my sister's pave. Now that's a fine table dessert. The pie was forgotten on the counter, with no space among the golden platters. I stood there, smiling, watching my own exclusion like someone watching an old play they've already memorized the script for. While the adults talked, the looks said more than the words. My mother averted her gaze every time I tried to participate. My sister's husband asked with a crooked smile. Still working at that place? What's it called again? Oh, that one that helps small businesses, right? How nice, this social side of yours. The pause between small and social had a taste of demotion. My sons were playing in the living room. At one point, I heard the younger one ask his cousin to lend him the toy car. The other responded, Mommy said you break things. My son stood still, holding the toy that never came. He looked at me from afar, and in that look, I saw a request I could no longer postpone. Protect me, but without staying silent. When we left, my mother walked me to the gate. Daughter, don't mind children's nonsense. You know how they are. They don't think before speaking. I wanted to say that children only repeat what they hear. But what would be the point? I just nodded and went on with the boys. In the rearview mirror, I saw my mother waving, small, distant, like someone saying goodbye without knowing if they want the other to return. That night I sat down with my notebook. I wrote, Family racism is when love has a code of conduct. And right below, every exclusion begins with a phrase said as a joke. I started collecting these phrases. I wrote down each one with date, location, context. A living file of microaggressions dressed as affection. Your hair is exotic. You're strong, you don't cry over just anything. Your sister was always more delicate. They were small cuts, made by the same hand that said, I love you, at the end of every call. The boys noticed I was quieter. The oldest asked if I was sad. I answered that I was attentive. He didn't understand and I didn't explain. I just hugged him because attention for me became survival. A week later, I received the invitation to my mother's birthday. It'll be simple, the message said. Just family. Those two words burned me like hot iron. Just family. On Saturday, I prepared the boys in their nicest clothes. Before leaving, I looked at myself in the mirror. Braided hair, black bead necklace that belonged to my grandmother, and wine-colored lipstick. Strong, firm, non-negotiable. I dressed in presence. When we arrived, laughter was already echoing from the porch. My sister was at the door, and she hugged me with that quick, heatless gesture. Good thing you came. I thought you'd miss it again. Smiled. This time I couldn't miss it. Inside I knew. I wasn't there to celebrate. I was there to observe. The party went on as always. Plates distributed, conversations around the table. And again, the invisible difference became visible. The main chairs were already occupied. What was left were the plastic ones, leaning against the wall. My sons sat in them without complaining. I stood for a while, looking at the scene's reflection in the buffet mirror. The children laughing, the adults pretending everything was natural. That's when I noticed the frame on the wall. A new family photo. Everyone together. My sister, her children, my parents. Me and my boys weren't there. Not in the background. Not blurred. We simply didn't exist. I felt my heart race, but I kept smiling. My fingers trembled discreetly. I took out my phone and took a picture of that absence. A record of what they always said was just my impression. When we got home, I saved the image in the Mesa/Files folder. I named the file Portrait Under Without Under 04.jpg. I looked at the name on the screen and felt something different. For the first time, what hurt also had shape. And shape is the first step toward proof. Before sleeping, I ran my hand through my oldest son's hair. He murmured, "Mom, why are we never in the photos?" I answered, "Because when the portrait lies, the truth needs to learn to take its own." He looked at me confused but smiled. And I thought, they don't know yet, but each click of exclusion from them is the flash that will illuminate my turn. The next morning, while having coffee, I received a notification. The party photo with caption, "Family reunited, grateful for another year." And someone tagged my name by mistake. The notification blinked on the screen for minutes before I had the courage to open it. When I finally clicked, the feed opened in a flash. My whole family smiling around the cake, the table full, candles lit, and me absent. No trace of me, not even a shadow. The caption said, "Family is where love begins and never ends." Irony has a smell, and that morning it smelled of frosting and fakeness. My stomach turned. The same cake I had helped assemble, the same tablecloth I washed, the same hands that filled the balloons. But in the image, my presence had been carefully edited, as if I were noise, distraction, excess. I looked at the date. Posted at 11:12 p.m. At that hour, I was still in the living room helping clean the floor. And while I was sweeping, they were already erasing me. I opened the comments. What a beautiful family. Everyone with the same smile. God bless this union. And a little heart from my mother. I grabbed my phone, took a screenshot, and added it to the Mesa/Files folder. I named it Portrait Under Without Under Shadow on 05.png. I didn't cry. Not anymore. What used to be a wound started transforming into study material. While the world saw love, I saw proof. That night, I sat on the bed, with the room almost dark. My sons were sleeping. The sound of their breathing was the only living thing in that house. I opened the party photo and kept zooming in until I found the details no one notices. The frame's reflection in the glass, the shadow of my mother's arm, and right in the corner, the mirror. In the mirror, a blurred figure. Me holding my phone. As if the image itself, in its attempt to erase me, had forgotten that reflections don't ask permission to exist. I rested my head on the pillow and let the thought go through me. They didn't erase me. They only showed how much they need to pretend to keep existing. The next morning my sister called me. "Hi sis, you okay? I saw you liked the photo." Her voice came light, sweet, trained. "I did like it," I answered without irony. She laughed, but didn't understand the tone. "Oh, I knew you wouldn't mind. We didn't even notice you didn't come out right. It was hectic, you know. Bad lighting, movement." I took a deep breath. Bad lighting never erases those who shine on their own. Silence. She choked on her own air. After a few seconds, she hung up, grumbling something about always thinking everything is about racism. It's not about thinking. It's about feeling the weight of centuries compressed in a family dinner. I went back to the computer and started writing what I called the inventory of the invisible. A diary without tears, just facts. Each episode an entry. Each silence a line. Each exclusion a numbered file. It was like assembling a puzzle of pain, but each piece that fit made me more lucid. On Friday night, I went to my mother's house to return a dish. She opened the door with the same automatic smile. "You should come more often. The house feels empty without you." I looked around. The walls were full of photos. Baptisms, birthdays, weddings. None with my face. Empty. "I think you've gotten pretty used to the space my absence left." She stood still, holding the dish towel like a shield. "You're always so dramatic." I smiled, and for the first time I didn't feel guilty. Dramatic is someone who spends their life rehearsing love in front of others. I left there with a calm heart, almost cold. On the street, the night's cold wind hit my face and I had the strange sensation of starting to come back to myself, like someone emerging from a lake after being submerged for a long time. On the way back, my sons were sleeping in the back seat. The oldest, even sleeping, was holding my hand. And I thought about how that gesture, simple and instinctive, was everything my family had unlearned, to hold instead of measure. Arriving home, I opened the laptop and stared at the files on the screen. The blue glow reflected in the window glass. For the first time, I realized that this dossier wasn't about revenge. It was about truth. And truth, when well kept, is patient. As I was closing the notebook, I heard the sound of a new notification. It was a private message from my oldest aunt. "Daughter, don't comment on anything, but your mother asked me to delete the photo. Said it was misinterpreted. I think she knows she was wrong." I pressed the phone to my chest. Smiled slowly. They think they erased me from a photo. Little do they know I just framed the entire story. I spent the week revisiting memories like someone walking barefoot over shards. Every step hurt, but I knew that, without crossing that floor, I would never understand the full map of pain. It all started before the dinner, before the photos, before I even knew what it was to be different. It started in the details that childhood doesn't understand, but the body never forgets. I remember the first time I heard my mother say, without realizing I was nearby, "We need to take better care of her to see if she lightens up a bit." I was 7 years old. I was playing with mud in the yard. I spent days trying to scrub the tone of my skin at the sink, thinking it was dirt. Deep down, it wasn't her fault. It was inheritance, not of blood but of pattern. The same inheritance that made my grandmother tell my mother, "If you marry white, you improve your children's future." And that now made my mother look at my sons, so black and beautiful, with the same discomfort disguised as care. It was a silent chain, passed down like a family recipe. And I was tired of being the main dish of that tradition. I opened an old drawer and found a wooden box with old letters and photos. There was my grandmother in black and white, with a firm gaze and a contained smile. On the back of the photo, a scribbled phrase. "We weren't born to fit. We were born to open the way." I kept that like someone finding a compass. I realized that perhaps my pain was the same she tried to bury. The difference is that now I had tools and the internet. I went back to the computer and wrote a text, just for myself. Racism within the family is the hardest to prove, because it comes wrapped in hugs and food platters. When I reread it, I felt my whole body vibrate. Not with anger, with clarity. That same day, my sister sent me a message. "Sis, Mom's hurt. Said you've been very cold. What happened?" I only answered, "Nothing happened. I just stopped shrinking." At night I watched my sons sleep. The younger one was dreaming out loud, murmuring scattered words. The oldest was holding a toy car, as if he still needed to protect something even while sleeping. I thought, what do I want to leave for them? Certainly not this inheritance of crumbs. I grabbed my phone and opened the Mesa/Files folder. There were already screenshots, audios, photos. But I realized something was missing. The living piece, the spoken memory. I started recording an audio for myself. "You're going to break this cycle, even if you have to cut the tie. Because love that requires humiliation to exist isn't love. It's a contract of silence." I saved the audio with the name Manifesto Unvoiced and 001 MP3. The next day, I posted a simple phrase on stories without tagging anyone. "Sometimes the family that teaches you to wait also teaches you to fight." It didn't take 5 minutes for my phone to ring. It was my mother. "Daughter, was that indirect aimed at me?" I answered with the calm of someone who already understood the game. "If it hurt, maybe it has an address." She stayed silent. And I felt that, for the first time, she heard more than she listened. If you've ever been the link that decided to break the chain, you know the weight of that. Sometimes you have to be the first to get up from the table so that others learn they can eat too. Leave your comment, not as a vent, but as testimony from someone who survived the disguise of harmony. In the following days, the discomfort in the family became a topic. A cousin messaged me in secret. "Thank you for speaking up. I thought it was only in my house." And another added, "They call you ungrateful, but I call you brave." Those words fed me. Each message was like a piece of bread offered by someone who was also left out of the feast. The following week, I decided to do something symbolic. I prepared the same dish my mother made at Christmas, meat in sauce and seasoned flour with fruits, but I served it only to my sons and 2 friends who always welcomed me. When we set the table, the oldest asked, "Mom, won't there be any left for anyone?" I answered, "Today we eat first." While they laughed, I realized that simple gesture was a kind of sacred revenge. Not to hurt, but to remember. To remember that real love doesn't choose who eats and who waits. I ended the night writing in the notebook, "Inheritance isn't what they leave for you. It's what you refuse to repeat." The next morning, I received an envelope under the door. Inside there was an old photo. Me still a child sitting at the table with the family. Someone had scribbled an X over my face. And on the back of the photo, a handwritten phrase, "Don't provoke what's already quiet." I stared at that photo for long minutes. The paper already yellowed, the edge folded, the X mark still wet, as if it had been written just hours before. I felt my stomach turn, not from shock, but from the precision of the warning. Don't provoke what's already quiet. It was the perfect confession disguised as a threat. Those who try to silence are always those who fear the sound of truth. I left the photo on the table, took a deep breath, and went to my son's room. They were sleeping, oblivious to everything, wrapped in the kind of peace I hadn't known for a long time. The oldest was dreaming about something light. He was smiling in his sleep. The younger one was murmuring softly, as if conversing with someone invisible. I looked at them and thought, "It's for you that I won't back down." The next morning before work, I digitized the photo and saved it in the Mesa/Files folder. I named the file, Inherited under threat 06.jpg. I made a point of putting the number, as a reminder that this was part of a whole, of a narrative that was finally beginning to take shape with clarity. While the computer was processing, I opened each of the previous files. Screenshots, audios, messages, photos, small excerpts from seemingly harmless conversations. And for the first time, I realized they weren't random fragments. They were a script, the script of erasure. And now, unlike previous times, the one writing the ending was me. I started putting together a timeline. Date of the dinner, date of the party, time of the post, my mother's audio, my sister's message, photo of the frame, threat the next morning, everything catalogued, everything organized. The sound of the keys was almost therapeutic. With each click, a scar closed. Suddenly, fear became method. In the afternoon, I went back to my mother's house to return a coat she had left in the car. She was alone, sitting on the couch sewing something. The TV was on but muted. "Did you come because of what happened?" she asked without looking up. "I came to return what's yours." I put the coat on the armchair. She looked quickly suspicious. "You've been acting strange. They're saying you're keeping things. That you want to expose the family." Smiled. "The family exposes itself, Mom. I just recorded what was always in plain sight." Her look hardened. "You don't understand how hard it is to be a mother. I only wanted the best for you. And who decides what's best? Those who eat first or those who learn to wait?" She went mute. For a few seconds, the silence between us seemed like a mirror, heavy, reflecting 2 generations trapped in the same pattern. Before leaving, I looked at the shelf. The photos were all there. That same frame with the complete family, without me. Next to it, a silver box with the old family crest, my grandfather's inheritance. Picked up the box. "Can I see?" "There's nothing there for you," she answered too quickly. And it was exactly in that speed that certainty went through me. The box held more than memories. I came home with the feeling that the game was changing. At night, I put the digitized photo and all the audios in a password-protected folder. Then I made a copy on a flash drive and hid it inside an old doll of the children's. It seemed paranoid, but I knew. Those who try to erase you once, try again. I opened the voice recorder. November 23rd. Received an old photo with a handwritten threat. "I'm keeping everything on record. If something happens, I leave this file as proof. And as a reminder, I'm not the child who accepted waiting for the rest." When I finished, I felt my whole body tingle. It wasn't fear. It was the exact sensation of standing up after years bent over. In the following days, I started reviewing work files. An IT colleague, an old friend, discreetly helped me organize the records in a remote backup. "What do you want to keep all this for?" he asked. I answered, "For when the truth asks for a table." He laughed, not understanding. But I knew I was preparing something bigger. That night, the boys asked to watch old family movies. I got the hard drive and searched. There was almost nothing with me. The recordings were all in my sister's hands. I imagined what she had done with them. Then, in the middle of the folders, I found a short cell phone video. It was from the same birthday. In the background of the mirror, once again my reflection. The same one that insisted on appearing even when they tried to erase me. I paused the video and left the image still. The woman there was me, tired but standing. And that's when I realized, maybe my revenge didn't need words. It was enough to project what they themselves created. Closed the notebook slowly. In the screen's reflection, I saw my firm eyes and thought, I don't want to hurt them. I want them to look at themselves. 2 days later, I received an anonymous message. They're planning another family dinner. This time to defend themselves against you. And the final phrase, if you go, bring the flash drive. The invitation arrived on a cloudy afternoon, with the same rehearsed tone of someone feigning normalcy after setting a house on fire. The family group vibrated on my phone. Reconciliation dinner, Sunday at 7 p.m. Everyone is welcome. The text came with heart emojis and a "let's leave the past behind." Behind the screen, I laughed alone. The past they wanted to leave behind was the same one that shaped me. And what they called reconciliation was, in fact, an attempt at control. I stared at that message for long seconds. I knew this dinner wasn't an invitation. It was a summons. And that the real dish of the night wouldn't be the roast, but me. The oldest noticed my expression and asked, "Is there going to be another dinner, Mom?" I nodded. "Yes. And this time we're going to arrive the right way." "What's the right way?" Smiled. "With the truth in my purse." During the week, I planned every detail like someone preparing a ritual. I reviewed the files, tested the flash drive, organized the videos and photos in chronological sequence. There was nothing out of place. Every click, every phrase, every frozen look in evidence. But more than proof, I wanted reflections. I wanted them to see themselves. On Saturday night, I took out the simplest dress I had, but wore a large golden necklace that my grandmother had left me. The same one she wore when she'd say, "Don't lower yourself to be accepted, girl." I looked in the mirror and felt something different. It wasn't vanity, it was armor. When I arrived at my parents' house, the facade was lit up, full of cars out front. There were guests beyond the family. Neighbors, church friends, the kind of audience that guarantees reputation. The strategy was clear. Surround me with witnesses to silence me with smiles. My sister greeted me at the door with a quick hug, expensive perfume scent, and a voice too sweet. "So glad you came, sis. Mom's happy." "I can imagine," I replied, returning the smile in the same tone I learned from them. Polite, sharp. I walked in and noticed everything. The set table, the gleam of the glasses, the new portrait on the wall, the same one from the party but now edited. They had put me back in a badly done montage. The mirror's reflection exposed the cut. The attempt at repair was more humiliating than the erasure. I sat with my sons. My mother came up to me with a trembling voice. "Daughter, today is about starting over. Enough with grudges." "I don't have grudges, Mom. I have records." She froze. My sister's husband cleared his throat loudly, trying to change the subject. "Let's eat, everyone. Family united again, thank God." The clatter of plates began. My sister's children were served first, as always. But before anyone could call my sons, I stood up. I took the plate, served both of them, and said, in a voice calm enough to cut the air, "Today my sons eat first." The silence was immediate. Conversations died, eyes crossed, and the sound of silverware stopped as if someone had cut the power. My mother tried to laugh, tense. "Daughter, why this? It's just custom. And it was this custom that brought us here." I sat back down calmly. It wasn't anger. It was the exact weight of justice being placed back at the center of the table. After dinner, my sister pulled me aside, her smile fading gradually. "You're planning something, aren't you? Just say it." "Me? Well, I just came for dinner. Look, if you want war, you'll regret it." I looked into her eyes slowly. War is the name you give it when someone refuses to be hurt in silence. She paled. "Mom just wants peace. Peace never comes before truth." I went back to the living room and saw that everyone was already gathered around the TV. Someone mentioned that the older nephew wanted to show a family video. A light smile escaped my lips, because inside my purse the flash drive waited. And in that moment, I realized that coincidence is sometimes just life aligning itself. The clock read 8:14 p.m. Voices filled the environment again, as if the discomfort had passed. But inside me something was already ready. It wasn't hatred. It was precision. Before leaving, I kissed my sons on the forehead and whispered, "Next time we come here, it'll be to watch a movie." "Which one, Mom?" "The one about truth." The next day, I received a message from an unknown number. "The video is ready to be shown. Sunday, 7:30 p.m. Use the flash drive." And below, a simple symbol. An empty frame. Sunday arrived with a strange sky. Gray but calm, the kind of color that precedes a change no one can predict. The message from the unknown number still glowed on my phone. Use the flash drive. No explanation, no sender. Part of me wanted to ignore it. But another part, the one that learned to survive without asking permission, knew that certain coincidences are just destiny disguised as opportunity. I spent the day in silence, preparing the boys, tidying the house, and deep down, breathing in the weight of what was to come. It wasn't fear. It was lucidity. At 6:40 p.m. we left. The boys, in white shirts and simple pants, were serene. The oldest asked, "Mom, is there going to be another dinner tonight?" "Yes. But today we're not going to eat." "What for then?" "To see." We arrived at my parents' house, and the feeling was the same as entering a theater before opening night. Lights too bright, loud voices trying to disguise tension. My mother came up to me and hugged me lightly, but her perfume, the same from every Christmas, brought me memories that no longer hurt, just organized me. "Good thing you came, daughter. Today will be different." Smiled. "Yes, it will." The living room was full. Family, people, neighbors, even a pastor my father respected. The dinner would clearly be a spectacle of good appearance. The projector was already set up, as announced. A video with family moments. My sister was presenting everything, excited, with her husband holding the remote control. It's to show that love conquers any difference. I sat with the boys in the shadows, at the edge of the room, observing every gesture. Her husband's hand trembled slightly. My mother's, resting on her lap, contracted in cycles, as if holding something invisible. When the lights dimmed and the video began, the screen showed images of dinners, birthdays, moments of unity. But within seconds, something strange happened. The images mixed. The dinner with the children eating first. The looks of contempt. The party photo without me. The audios with cutting phrases. They're very different. Leave it for later. Everything perfectly edited, as if someone had assembled a parallel narrative. My eyes widened. I wasn't the one who put together that video. But everything that was there, every record, every proof, came from my files. The empty frame at the end of the screen displayed a white phrase on a black background. Every family has a mirror. Some choose to break it. Others prefer to look. The room plunged into absolute silence. My father stood up suddenly. What kind of joke is this? No one answered. My sister tried to turn off the projector, but the file restarted automatically, repeating the part of my mother saying, "We can't mix too much or people will talk." Voices began to cross. The pastor coughed, embarrassed. The children asked quietly, "Why is Grandma crying?" And I, standing there, just watched. I didn't need to say anything anymore. Everything I could say was there, on video, in sound, in truth. My mother turned to me, pale. "Was it you?" I looked into her eyes, unhurried. I was the one who saved it. But I wasn't the one who said it. She brought her hand to her mouth, trembling. My sister's husband shouted that this was an invasion, that I wanted to destroy the family. And then my oldest son stood up and said, with a calm that pierced through me, "We're just showing what you always wanted to hide." The silence returned, but this time it was different. It wasn't the silence of oppression. It was the silence of revelation. The kind that transforms the air into a mirror, forcing each person to face themselves. I stood up slowly, adjusted the golden necklace, and said only, "When you decided that my sons would eat later, you thought you were teaching order. But you were teaching hierarchy." I left the remote control on the table and turned my back on them. No one stopped me from leaving. The truth was already laid out, and unlike me, it didn't fit in frames. Outside, the night air was light. My sons laughed, innocent, as if they had just watched a cartoon. The younger one asked, "Mom, did you make that beautiful video?" I answered, "Truth makes videos by itself, son. It just needs someone to save it." If you've ever seen someone transform humiliation into a mirror, share this. Because when truth appears, it no longer belongs to those who hid it. It belongs to those who need to see themselves. As we were getting into the car, my phone vibrated. A new message from the same anonymous number. "They know it wasn't you, but they want to know who it was." The following night seemed quieter than normal. The kind of silence that isn't empty. It's dense, full of held breaths, things that aren't said but echo anyway. Since the dinner, no one from the family had reached out to me. No calls, no messages in the group. Everything stopped. Even the family group disappeared from my WhatsApp, as if it had dissolved into thin air. For a moment I thought about blocking all the numbers, moving houses, disappearing. But something inside me said it was time to remain. What was broken wasn't a relationship. It was a myth. And when a myth falls, it makes noise. On Monday morning, I went to work as if nothing had happened. I walked through the office hallway with the same calm with which a wave recedes before hitting harder. When I got to my desk, I noticed curious looks. A colleague approached, whispering, "I saw a video. It's your family, right?" "Depends on what you saw." She hesitated. "It's strong. But it's beautiful too." I took a deep breath. The video had already leaked. Someone had shared it. Maybe one of the guests, maybe someone from the family itself. And now, the story that for years was confined to four walls was spreading like wind on dry grass. I went to the bathroom and opened my phone. Notifications, messages, links. One of the videos showed the exact moment when my sister tried to turn off the projector, and my mother's audio echoed through the room. "We can't mix too much or people will talk." In the comments, people from everywhere were saying, "Sounds like my family. This is more common than you think. Thank you for showing what many hide." I read everything in silence. What I felt wasn't pleasure. It was a kind of bittersweet relief. The exact taste of being seen after years of being ignored. At lunchtime, my phone rang. It was my mother. I let it ring. Then another call, my sister. Again I didn't answer. I knew the impulse would be to deny, cover up, blame. I didn't want to hear rehearsed excuses. I wanted them to hear themselves. In the afternoon, I received an unexpected call. The aunt who always stayed neutral. "Daughter, I saw the video. You're not alone. Everyone in the family always knew, they just pretended not to see. Now there's no way to deny it anymore." There was silence, and then she added, "Your mother is devastated. Said she can't leave the house. She should have thought about that when she made us wait for the leftovers." I hung up slowly. I felt my heart beat heavy but firm. The pain now came filtered, rational. It was as if every repressed tear had turned into a piece of steel inside me. At night, I sat with my sons for dinner. They were light, laughing, not understanding the dimension of what was happening. The oldest asked, "Mom, did everyone see the video?" "Yes." "And is that bad?" "No, son. It's fair." While washing the dishes, I heard the sound of the TV on in the living room. The local news was talking about a viral video about discrimination within Brazilian families. They didn't mention names, but I knew. My name, which never fit in the family photos, now circulated between the lines of a national conversation. The next day, my mother showed up at the gate of my workplace. Sunken eyes, worn face, the dress she saved for going to church. She asked to talk. We went to a nearby square. She cried before saying any word. "Daughter, I didn't know it hurt that much." "The problem is you did know, Mom. You just pretended not to see. We're from another generation. And that's why I had to break the plate for you to understand that you don't eat in silence." She looked at me, confused, and then lowered her head. There was no more possible defense. When she left, I sat on the bench and took a deep breath. The shame was no longer mine. And it was strange to realize that the noise of the world finally included me. If this story reminds you of something, share it. Not to expose, but to liberate. Because every time silence is broken, an entire table of injustice collapses with it. At night, I received an email with no subject, with a single attachment, a photo of the flash drive in the palm of a hand. The caption said, "It's not over yet. They want to make a public apology." The email arrived without a name, without a face, just that image of the flash drive on a hand, and the phrase, "They want to make a public apology." Took me a few seconds to understand. Then a shiver ran up my spine. I knew what was coming. The spectacle of repentance, the staging of well-behaved guilt. The family that erased me for years now needed to clean up their own name. The next morning, local news sites were full of vague headlines. "Family involved in viral video makes public apology." Official statement about internal misunderstandings. Situation resolved, family members emphasize. I read everything at once, with coffee cooling on the table. The words were the same as always. Misunderstanding, taken out of context. Love above all. But between the lines I read something else. We want to maintain appearances. My phone rang. It was my sister. "We need to talk before the press conference." "Press conference?" I asked, feigning surprise. "Yes, Mom called the church press. Said it's important to show that the family remains united." "United for what?" "To lie together." She sighed. "Don't be like that. You already got what you wanted. Everyone's talking about you. You're mistaken. I never wanted fame. I wanted respect." Hung up. The call fell like a stone in a well. No echo. Late in the afternoon, I received another email. This time a live stream link. Opened it. There they were. My mother, my father, my sister and her husband, seated in lined-up chairs, the microphone centered, the pastor beside them. The banner behind said, "Family, bond of faith and forgiveness." They spoke for almost half an hour. Minimizing, distorting, explaining. Saying it was an isolated moment, that the media exaggerated, that no prejudice exists where there's love. I watched everything in silence. I didn't cry. I didn't laugh. I just noted the time, date, and transcription of key phrases. File saved. Appearance under press on a conference on 07p4. At the end, the pastor asked for a prayer. My mother held my sister's hand and said, looking at the camera, "We just want our daughter to know that we forgive her." Pause the video there. I stared at the screen for minutes, trying to understand what hurt more, being erased or being treated as the offender. I grabbed my phone and started recording without planning. The voice came out calm but firm. When a mother says she forgives the daughter who exposed her, it's because she still hasn't understood that the one who exposed herself was her. Forgiveness isn't given to the one who showed the mirror. Forgiveness is asked of the one who had the courage to hold it. I sent the audio to a journalist who had reached out days before. She responded in seconds. "Can I publish it?" "Publish everything." The next morning the article was out. Woman responds to family that excluded her. "I wasn't the one who destroyed their image. It was the reflection." Messages started arriving. Strangers thanking me. Other black women telling identical stories. Blonde cousins praised, aunts who said, "You're pretty for a black girl." Fathers who stayed silent while insults came disguised as advice. It was as if an invisible crowd, which for years ate emotional crumbs, was now knocking on my door saying, "We heard you." And among so many messages, a new notification. Video message sent by Mom. My heart raced. Opened it. She was alone in the backyard, hair tied back, voice without makeup. "Daughter, I don't want cameras anymore, or pastors, or public apologies. I just want to understand. When did I make you feel small?" Took me a while to respond. I recorded a short audio. "It wasn't just one day, Mom. It was all those days when you asked me to understand what had no explanation." I sent it and turned off the phone. I stared at the sunset through the window. The sky seemed divided, half golden, half shadow. And me there in the middle, neither victim nor villain, just someone who learned to breathe between the two tones. If you've ever had to prove your own pain to be heard, keep your heart open here. Share this story, not to hurt but to remember. Appearance is not cure. Truth is. At the end of the night, while putting away the flash drive, I noticed something new. An envelope under the door. Inside, a handwritten letter on old paper with the family crest. At the top, a phrase. "If you want to understand everything, come to Christmas dinner. It will be just us." The envelope seemed to pulse on the table. Thick paper, smell of mold and expensive perfume. At the top, the family crest that only appeared on wedding invitations and special masses. "If you want to understand everything, come to Christmas dinner. It will be just us." The handwriting was my mother's. Firm, elegant, but with shaky strokes. I thought about ignoring it. About blocking the number, tearing up the invitation, pretending the story was already over. But it wasn't over. Stories like ours don't end when the truth appears. They just change stages. On Christmas night, I put on a simple black dress, hair tied back, minimal makeup. The boys stayed with a neighbor. This time, it was a conversation I needed to have alone. Driving to my parents' old house was like crossing a tunnel of echoes. Every corner held a memory. The Christmas of comparisons, the New Year of cold toasts, the Sundays of crooked looks. When I parked, the house lights were on, but the street seemed deserted. I rang the doorbell. My mother opened the door. Tired face, red eyes. "Thank you for coming. I still don't know why." "You will." Entered. The table was set with the same care as always. Aligned glasses, napkins folded like flowers, the turkey in the center, gleaming under the yellowish chandelier light. But there was something different. In place of presents, a pile of envelopes and folders. Documents. My father was seated at the head, in silence. My sister beside him, head down. Her husband didn't even look at me. I sat at the opposite end. The wall clock read 8 p.m. The sound of the hands was the only living thing in that room. My mother started slowly. "We were wrong." For the first time, the phrase came out without justification. She took a deep breath and continued. "And it wasn't just with you. It was with everyone who came before us. What you showed in the video. The shame we felt was the reflection of a history we learned to repeat." She opened one of the folders and took out an old photograph. A black woman with a scarf on her head, holding a white baby. This is your great-grandmother. She took care of a rich family's house. Her son, your grandfather, was never allowed to sit at the table with the employers. And when he climbed a step, he swore that his children would never go through the same humiliation. My mother looked at me with contained tears. But we only changed sides of the table, daughter. We kept measuring who deserves to eat first. The silence that followed was the heaviest of my life. I felt a knot in my throat between anger and pity. Anger because it took too long. Pity because for the first time they seemed human, stripped of arrogance, fragile before their own inheritance. My father then stood up. He held a white envelope. Here are the papers for the farmhouse. It's in your name now. I shook my head. I don't want anything that comes from guilt. It's not guilt. It's reparation. My mother approached slowly and placed her hand on mine. We wanted to erase what you showed. But the video opened more than wounds. Opened eyes. Many people from church, from the community, started talking about this. And that's when I understood. Shame doesn't kill. Silence does. She cried softly, and this time I didn't look away. That woman who once told me that I embarrassed the family was now asking, without words, to learn what she never knew how to teach: respect. I took the envelope, looked at all of them and said, "You thought I wanted to destroy the family. But all I wanted was to build one that didn't need to hide its own color." The clock struck 9 p.m. The lights blinked with the old string lights, the same from when I was a child. But now, for the first time, that glow seemed different. I stood up, fixed my hair and walked to the door. Before leaving, I looked back and said, "I didn't come to have dinner. I came to digest the past. And it's already done." The door closed softly. Outside, the air was cold but clean. I felt the weight of generations staying behind. If you've ever had to choose between silence and dignity, share this story. Because sometimes, the real feast is the moment when you decide not to accept the plate of shame anymore. Hours later, already at home, I received a message from a new number. "I'm the daughter of the woman in the photo your mother showed you. I think we have more history in common than you imagine." I spent the early morning hours awake, staring at the phone on the table. The message blinked like a memory that insists on not being erased. "I'm the daughter of the woman in the photo your mother showed you. I think we have more history in common than you imagine." I touched the screen and responded with a simple, "We can talk." Minutes later, the call came. The voice on the other end was calm, deep, mature, but carried the same tone of someone who learned early to swallow what hurt. "My name is Celia. My grandmother was the maid who raised your grandfather." Silence. One of those silences that break generations. We talked for hours. She told me about the whispered stories, the secrets passed from mother to daughter. That the son of the woman my mother called helper was the same man who founded the family's small business, and who, ironically, sustained for decades the same surname that denied me a place at the table. Every phrase was a stitch between two sides of an old scar. In that instant, I realized the revenge was never just mine. It was collective. The voice of every silenced black woman, of every mother who heard that her daughter's hair was difficult, of every girl who got used to eating last. They were all there with me. Celia told me she watched the video, crying, and that for the first time she felt that someone had said out loud what so many of them lived in the dark. "You don't know what you did. We thought no one would ever listen to us." I thought so too. I hung up the call with a heart both heavy and light at the same time. Heavy from inherited pain, light from justice done. Not the justice of courts, but the justice of the mirror, the one that forces everyone to see themselves as they are. Outside, the sun was beginning to rise. I opened the window and let the cold air in. The sounds of the city, hurried steps, the distant whistle of a train, a dog barking, seemed sharper. It was as if the whole world was breathing with me. I picked up the flash drive that had started everything and looked at it one last time. That small piece of metal held the proof of my pain, but also the record of my liberation. Without hesitating, I walked to the balcony and threw it in the trash. Not out of forgetting, but out of closure. At the table, the boys were waking up slowly. The younger one hugged me and asked sleepily, "Mom, can we go to their Christmas now?" I smiled and answered, "We're going to have our own Christmas, son. One where everyone eats together." While preparing coffee, I felt the cycle had closed. Not in a perfect way, nor with a soap opera ending, but with something more real, peace. The video still circulated on the internet, but it no longer belonged to me. It belonged to the women who shared it, to the girls who saw a mirror there, to the families who were finally starting to see themselves. I sat at the table with my sons and took a deep breath. The aroma of hot coffee mixed with freshly baked bread reminded me of something I learned too late. Sometimes, winning is just having the courage to continue with dignity when everyone expects you to bow. I looked out the window and imagined my mother in her house, perhaps preparing another dinner, perhaps thinking about everything she lost trying to seem perfect. And I truly wished that she would learn what I finally understood. Appearance feeds pride, but it's truth that feeds the soul. I smiled, picked up my phone and wrote the last message of the story. "Mom, when you're ready, come have dinner with us. The table is small, but there's room for those who come in peace." I sent it and set the device aside. The sound of children laughing in the kitchen filled the house, and for a moment, the whole world seemed to fit in that sound. A simple, human but powerful sound, the opposite of the silence that hurt me for so long. If you've ever transformed pain into courage, this story is also yours. Subscribe to continue hearing voices that refuse to disappear, because every story told is a place we reclaim. And that's how I learned. Sometimes the real feast isn't at someone else's table, but in the moment when you create your own table, serve your own truth, and never again accept eating what's left of other people's respect.